This is a military prototype truck that was built by Chevrolet. This is the XM705. Now, this truck is one of only about 7 known to still exist. And the reason Chevrolet built these experimental military trucks was to try to win a contract to replace the Kaiser Jeep M715. Now, this was released for testing in 1971, but the Kaiser Jeep M715 was built from 67 to about 69. And 3 years is not a very long production run. The reason for this is because the M715 was not very well received. They were fairly inexpensive to build, which is very attractive to the military. But one of the M715's greatest downfall was the engine that they put in it. The 230 cubic inch inline 6 Tornado engine. At the time, this engine was pretty advanced because it was one of the first mass-produced US trucks that came with an overhead camshaft. But it was very underpowered for the M715 1.25 ton truck. It was also very well known for leaking oil. So after the M715 went out of production, Chevy came out with this. Now, this XM705 is a 1.25 ton truck that was trying to take the place of the M715. So after these trucks were produced, all 30 of them were delivered in 1971 to different military bases all over the United States. Testing commenced, and from what I've read, they were very well received. They were durable and the troops loved them. And the maintenance cost was comparable to the M715. I said maintenance cost, not repair cost. Despite these trucks being well received by the guys on the ground who were actually using them, they did cost a little bit more money to produce than the previous M715, which is not a good thing. They already got rid of the M715. Why would they want a new vehicle that cost more money? But not only that, at this time, we're talking about 1971, the military was really looking for cheaper options for military trucks. They wanted to get away from purpose-built trucks like this because they cost so much money, and when you build a specialized vehicle, you have to have specialized parts on the shelf to fix these vehicles. So after the military decided this truck was a no-go, I have read reports of the US military actually going back to their old Dodge M37s, which are late 50s vehicles, and refurbishing them and restoring them for service. And the reason they were doing that is because that was the cheapest alternative to hold out until something else came along that was cheap and more standardized. Now, later on, their prayers were answered with the Chevy M1008, which was a 1.25 ton truck, and the Dodge M880, which was a 3/4 ton truck. Both of these were more standardized vehicles. Parts were much more easy to get for them. And from then on, those trucks became the military's new primary light duty and medium duty trucks. And the XM705 was history. Unfortunately, it never left its prototype stage. Now, I got the rare opportunity to buy this vehicle from an estate auction. The last owner of this vehicle passed away. They did an estate auction on all of his stuff. I heard about it. The auction was in Maryland, but at the time I was in Massachusetts for a missions trip. We were helping to build a church. I did a little bit of research on it. I knew it was rare. I knew it was unique. As a military vehicle enthusiast, I just had to have this thing, so I bought it and had it shipped to Kentucky. The spare wheel never made it home from Maryland. We may get into that later. My driver was some Russian dude that didn't speak English. We got into a little bit of an argument about it, but
No, God.
yeah, I don't know what that means. I might play that footage at the end of the video. Anyways, the history of this specific truck is not very well known. We do know that it came from the DNR because there's a sticker on it. A lot of times when big companies build prototype vehicles, once they're done with their testing phase, they either get brought back in and crushed, or they get auctioned off to government departments. I did find that this truck has been recorded as one of the survivors on a website called vintagemilitarytrucks.com. You can get on there and find a couple more of the survivors. You will find that a lot of them were sold off to fire departments. The XM705 page on that website does seem to have a write-up that's a little bit confusing. The write-up makes it sound like this truck was competing directly against the M715, but at this time, the M715 had already been decommissioned. It's a pretty cool site to look at. I'll link it in the description. I gotta say, it was pretty cool to see my truck on that website after I had won that auction sight unseen. Now, I have been in touch with the previous owner's wife, and I've asked her a little bit about this truck, and she was unable to give me any information. She doesn't know much about it at all. Now, I did come across a couple posts in some Facebook groups where the previous owner was bragging about owning this truck. I thought that was really cool. Those pictures were from 8 years ago, and if you notice, the distributor cap is taken off, which could be a hint as to why this thing was parked. There is a sticker on the windshield that shows that it was last registered in 1982. Is that the last time it ran? I'd be lying to you if I told you I knew. I've heard this truck was built using off-the-shelf parts at Chevrolet. So let's pop the hood on this thing and check it out. So coming to the engine bay on this truck, this is actually a 307 Chevy V8. We are missing the voltage regulator, would have set right here. We've got 2 external resistors there. It has probably been resisted down to 12 volts. We are missing the original military ignition system. Let's check the engine oil. Ew, we've got some white milkiness on our dipstick. Definitely have water in the oil, so we'll have to change that out before we start cranking on it. Coming to the passenger side, we've got 2 batteries that have been on here at least 8 years. We're missing a tube here that goes from the air filter to the carburetor. The lower radiator hose is incredibly dry rotted. Oh gosh, that hose is dry rotted too. Look at this. Pulled that right off. Well, dadgum. That's the reason you ain't getting no gas. That fuel line appears to be completely kinked. We'll definitely have to make up a new fuel line before we try to run this thing. Let's check our coolant. 15-pound radiator cap. Yeah, it looks like we also need a new radiator cap because that's got a pretty good crack in it. Ew. We've got coolant at the very bottom, but man, look at all that corrosion is what that is. Gross. I've had these batteries on a charger for quite a while, so let's go to the cab, turn the key, and see if we get anything. This cab feels really big. And you want to know why Chevy made these cabs so large. I'm pretty sure it's so that soldiers can hop in this thing with a gun slung on their back. Let's test that theory. Yeah. Not sure what you do with it afterwards. There seems to be a little gun rack right there. Look at that. That's just perfect. So the cab is really cool on this thing. I've never seen a dash this nice in a military vehicle. Usually you just get a bunch of lights that look like this on the dash for your indicators. Looks like we're showing 5,009 miles. Got a generator light, oil light, temp light. What I don't like is how it doesn't show your oil pressure or coolant temperature. It's just got a warning light for them. Brake light, high beam, and then you got a fuel gauge right here. Of course, this is like your standard military style turn signal. And then we've got the light switch. This is actually really cool. I've never seen one of these before. Usually they're like the NATO style switches. Ignition switch here. Nothing's happening. Pull washer. Oh, washer fluid. Washer fluid on a 70s military vehicle. 4-speed transmission, 4 low and 4 high on the transfer case. Power, defrost. So these are just ventilation levers. And this looks like a switch for the blower motor. I'm really digging that gun rack. Wiper motor here. Got a glove box here that has a bunch of warnings and stuff. 4th gear, this thing will go 60? That's pretty quick. Do not shift transfer case into low when vehicle speeds exceed 5 miles per hour. We've got a lot of maintenance items here. Looks like this thing takes 30 weight oil. Here's the original ignition switch. That would be starter, that would be on, accessory, and then that would be off. Then we've got this diagnostic port, which I think is really interesting because I don't know of any 70s trucks. Maybe Deuce and a Halfs have diagnostic ports, but I know like M151s definitely do not. We've got a random switch that has been added right here. I'm really not too sure what that goes to yet. I think this is a parking brake. Yeah. I believe that's a parking brake. Pretty cool. The storage compartment here. You can actually see kind of the original color there. That olive drab green from the Korean War / Vietnam era. Got a brass pipe flange. There's a tie rod end. Rat's nest. Now I noticed hinges on these seat bottoms. So I suppose you can lift these up. Look at that old military green. What have we got in here? A fire extinguisher, rat's nest. Looks like we got a wrench. Just noticed this set of points. Borg Warner. New old stock parts. Looky here. There is a condenser. Looks like we've got some points. This video is sponsored by Raycon, and this is their new Open Essential earbuds. These earbuds are great. I mainly use them while I'm working because they allow me to work but also stay situationally aware. Their secure fit ensures these things stay put on your ear no matter what you're doing. I love wearing these while working in my skid steer. Let's see if we can get them to fall out. I mean, these things will not fall off of your ear. They are super comfortable and lightweight. After about an hour of wearing them, you forget they're even there. Regarding things I've forgotten about, these puppies have 36 hours of battery life with the case, and I'm not sure when the last time I charged them was. The best part about these earbuds is the fact they deliver the same premium audio quality as all the big guys, but at half the cost and a 30-day happiness guarantee. Aside from all of the obvious reasons you should have a pair of Raycon earbuds, are also great for loud machines that don't have radios. Like driving my extremely loud military wrecker. These earbuds are already very affordable, but to celebrate Raycon's anniversary, they're letting me give you guys a 30% discount. Click the link in the description box or go to buyraycon.com/BradenBuildsOpen to get 30% off the Essential Open earbuds. That's buyraycon.com/BradenBuildsOpen. Guys, be sure and check out Raycon. It's sponsors like these that fund these awesome videos, and supporting them supports me. Let's get back to it. All right, well, I suppose we could. First thing I want to do is put a ratchet on the crank and make sure the engine's not locked up, and we'll go from there. It's actually turning. Doesn't seem to want to turn too easy, but it is turning. What I think I'm gonna do next before I get to cranking on this thing, I'd like to drain that old nasty oil out, because when we start turning this thing over, it's gonna pump that nasty oil into all of the oil galleys within the engine. I don't want it to get that far. I want to get it out now. I am going to be interested to see how much water comes out of this thing. Okay, here's our drain plug. Look at that. Oh, look at all the water. Oh my gosh. Why am I letting that in the pan? It's just water. Look at that. Oh my word, that's a lot of water. The oil's gonna come shortly after. I've been through this before. Wait for it. Guys, I feel like I could drink that. Oh, there it is. Here comes the oil. Oh my gosh, that was insane. Ew. That is crazy. It's coming to an end. Dang it, son. I am definitely glad we drained that out. One of my first videos, I did a little revival on a Ford 600 that had been in the bottoms. I'm talking once a year the Tennessee River would come up and this truck would go completely underwater. But before I got it running, I drained the oil and a bunch of clear water came out just like that. You would not believe how many people said, this is fake, this is staged. That is just what happens. Oil and water don't mix. The water settles at the bottom and the oil goes to the top. What I'm gonna do next is pour a bunch of diesel in the oil fill, and what that diesel is going to do, it's going to run through the engine and flush a lot of whatever's left in it. So let's do that right quick. Take this oil fill cap off. Goodness. That ought to be good enough. This is a big old oil filter housing here. I think the actual filter, yep, should just fall right out. Looks like a Napa part number on it. Napa 1129. So I did not have a Napa, but I've got a Wix. For the 6 other people out there that own an XM705, the Wix part number is 51129. Extremely valuable information. Now here's the new one. New filter in the can. All right, I believe that's on there. All right. The service tag said 30 weight, so I've got some random 1030 here and some more random 1030 here. This is just leftover oil from all the things I get into. And we're gonna top the rest of it off with some automatic transmission fluid that I flushed out of that Duramax. It's in a coolant jug, but I promise it's not coolant. This automatic transmission fluid is just gonna help clean things up a little bit. Right on it. It's starting to get dark. What I'm gonna do next is pull the spark plugs out of this engine. This thing's been sitting so long that it wouldn't surprise me if there was a little bit of surface rust, flash rust inside the cylinder walls. Not only that, but this thing has been sitting so long without running that those piston rings have probably froze up in the piston, so they can't move freely and conform to the cylinder. So what the penetrating oil is going to help do is free up those piston rings. You could argue that I'm also giving it some lubrication since it's set so long. All of the oil that would have been in the cross hatching and the cylinder walls have dried up now. But as soon as you start cranking this thing, if it builds up oil pressure, it's gonna coat those walls. So that's not really a big concern. Dropped it. Man, these things are in. All right, let's spray some penetrating oil in these cylinders. Oh my gosh. Did y'all see that? We just had a bunch of water pour out of that cylinder. Not good. All right, penetrating oil. I'll tell you how I think all that water got in there. This hood has these vents right here. I'm gonna guess they're for airflow and heat dissipation, but I tell you what they actually do. When this hood gets rained on, water slides down and goes into those vents. It goes right on the top of this engine. And I bet you as that water sits on the top of this engine, it seeps through that intake manifold gasket and right off into the cylinders. Chinook. Let's change out these old batteries so that we can turn this thing over. I want to push all the penetrating oil out of the cylinders. After that, we're gonna move on to either fuel or spark. Haven't decided yet. Look at this. Somebody drilled a hole through a penny and used it as a washer. Honestly, that's probably a lot cheaper than a washer. Where do we throw our old batteries? You guys know the answer. Come on. I need to clean up these corroded connections. May end up throwing new cables on this at some point, but not today. Make sure these are all torqued down good. All right, let's see if we have power. Okay, key on. No lights on the dash. What in the world? It's not doing anything. Oh, what in the? I'm not sure how this is wired up, but you have to have this switch all the way to the left. Now I have lights on the dash. Let's see if it cranks over. Heck yeah, baby, she's turning right over. It looks like we shot out the water that we found in that cylinder. Because we found water in that one cylinder, what I'm gonna do next is spray some WD-40 in all of the cylinders to help displace the water. That's actually what WD stands for, water displacement. And then 40 is the amount of times it took them to come up with this formula. So water displacement, firing system, and then we will move to the fuel. All right, ignition system time. We did an oil change on it, got the thing to turn over from the key again. Now we need to make sure that we're getting spark. Okay, key on the run position. We should be able to check our firing system now. Dadgummit, I'm getting old. I think I can sit right here. So we're gonna start on the ignition system. Typically the ignition system on these older vehicles is extremely simple. From the starter switch, you have a wire that goes to an external resistor. A lot of times you will also have a wire coming off of the starter solenoid that is connected to the starter solenoid trigger wire, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But from the resistor, that wire will provide about 6 to 9 volts to the coil. Now the other wire that comes off of the solenoid provides the coil 12 volts while cranking. So when you turn the key to start, the coil receives 12 volts. Once the engine is started, you let the key go, it goes back into accessory. That 12 volt wire is no longer shooting 12 volts to the coil, but that other wire that's coming off of the switch to a resistor provides 6 to 9 volts to the coil. That's what keeps the engine running. The coil then has a wire that goes down inside of the distributor, and that's where all of the magic happens. Now, military vehicles are a lot different. To start off, most of them are 24 volt. Back in the 70s, getting parts were a lot different than it is today. You can't just pull out your phone and search 24 volt coil and order one. Parts were a lot more difficult to come by, especially 24 volt parts, because in the civilian automotive world, pretty much everything's 12 volt. When electrical components like the starter or ignition system begin to fail, what happens is these military surplus 24 volt vehicles get converted down to 12 volt, and I think that's what we're seeing here. So we've got a busted distributor cap, and this is all civilian parts. Military vehicles have braided wires. Everything in the ignition system on gas powered military vehicles is completely closed off and watertight. Not only that, but the brass braided spark plug wires are supposed to be EMP proof. So I mentioned this earlier, but we are missing the voltage regulator, and then we have these two ballast resistors here. We've got what I suspect a power coming into the first resistor. That power comes out the first, into the second, out of the second, and then it goes to a 12 volt coil. From the coil, goes down to the distributor and gives the distributor power. So looking at our power in, interestingly enough, we've got, oh, wow, this fell apart. Got a wire jammed into the plug. It looks like this wire is tapped into a wiring harness. Besides this should be the ignition voltage in. Let's test that theory. Okay, key on. 24.8 volts is coming out of this wire. So this is our key switch signal. Let's plug this in. So we should be getting 24 volts coming into the first ballast. 24.8. What do we got coming out? 24.9. Okay, either these ballasts are shot or they're not big enough to handle the amperage. So we should have 24.9 coming into the second. Okay, and what do we have leaving? 24.9 volts. And that's going directly to that 12 volt coil. And it's upside down, but it does say that it's a 12 volt coil. So we're getting 24 volts to a 12 volt coil? Yep, 24.8 volts. I think we're starting to figure out why this thing was parked. Now the pictures I found online of this truck shows the distributor cap taken off, which is a pretty big clue. It seems like they were having ignition issues. Not only that, but we found 3 sets of points in this truck. We found that old nasty set in the storage compartment. We also found that new old stock part that was in the storage compartment. And there's currently a set on the distributor. Why would there be 2 other sets of points in this truck? Points aren't really a common failure point. They kind of do one thing. Most of the times when they fail, all you have to do is clean up the contacts and they're good to go again. Could it be that someone attempted to convert this truck from 24 volt to 12 volt? In doing so, they installed those 2 ballasts. They thought those 2 ballasts would be enough, hooked it up to a 12 volt coil, and they started burning up points. They probably never got out a multimeter to diagnose this, so they just kept on buying points, throwing points at it, and the problem was never solved. I gotta buy a 24 to 12 volt converter now. While we're waiting on that converter to come in, why don't we just replace the whole ignition system? Not necessarily because it needs to be replaced, but because I already bought all new parts for this, and I'd rather just put them on the truck than let them sit and collect dust on the shelf. All right, we've got a new coil, new points, condenser, rotor, distributor cap, new wires, and we also got some new spark plugs. Our little 24 volt to 12 volt converter just came in the mail. This is a 30 amp, bought it off Amazon. All right, our alligator clips are outputting 24.6 volts. Let's hook these up to the new converter. Hook up our grounds. Red is gonna be input. Okay, ground. And yellow is gonna be our 12 volt output. There we are, 12.2 volts. Looks like this thing works. So my idea is use the existing holes that were here for the voltage regulator, mount the converter right here. Grounds will go to this hole. We'll have our ignition voltage in going to the red wire, and then the 12 volts will be going out of the yellow wire to the resistor. I'm gonna mount the resistor right here. From the resistor, we will have a wire going to the coil. This hole is where our ground is gonna be. Let's clean that off. Let's throw our new resistor on. Right there. Now our ignition voltage in is a military style plug. I want to retain that military plug in case I need to unplug it. So here I've got a cut off male end to that military plug, and we're going to connect it to this roll of wire. Connect our military plug. Now we're looking to create our wire that goes from the resistor to the coil. Little bitty connector. One end goes here and the other to the coil. All right, just as advertised, we've got the ignition power, 24 volts going into the converter. Converter wire is grounded out, 12 volts going out to the resistor. And then while it's running, it should be a little bit less than 12 volts going to the coil. Let's turn the key on and see if this thing has spark now. Got our spark test light, gonna plug this in. Now I'm gonna leave you guys right here, and while we're turning this thing over, if this thing lights up, it means we've got spark. Sweet, looks like we've got spark. I'm gonna plug this spark plug back up. All right, now we need to figure out what's going on with our fuel. Now I don't know if this fuel gauge is correct, but it is showing empty. Let's open up our fuel tank and look for ourselves. Whew, that smells awful. There's a screen in here. Bunch of corrosion in the filler neck. There is a little bit of fuel in there, not a whole lot though. Chevy 307s are low compression engines, and low compression engines can run on really low quality fuel. I don't know that that's the reason Chevy went with the 307 in this truck. I actually think they did it to try to cut costs, but it is another plus of having a 307 in a military truck. The highest quality fuel is not always available to you. I say we put 5 gallons of fresh fuel in here, and then that high quality fuel is gonna dilute what fuel is left in this tank. Now we'll do that in a second when it's a little closer to time, but the next thing I want to look into is this electric fuel pump right here. And this fuel pump is going to help us out greatly because this is going to prime the fuel system so that the mechanical pump doesn't have to work so hard. Now I have electric pumps we can hook up to this so that we can prime the system ourselves, but I do want to figure out why this electric fuel pump's not working. Yeah, I don't hear that thing running at all. So let's take this plug off this electric fuel pump. We've got a very simple 2-prong plug. One of these is gonna be hot, one of these is gonna be ground. And the easiest way to tell is I've got my 24 volt alligator clips. I'm gonna hook up the test light to the positive, and this test light is gonna light up when we hit the ground. There we go. And then the right side's the hot. Tell you what, let's hook 24 volts up straight to this pump and see if it'll start pumping fuel. So this one goes here. I'll try not to touch them. Okay. They're hooked up. That's right, isn't it? That fuel pump is definitely not working. Well, I guess the next thing we can do is pull this housing off. Well, we've got a hole for a wire, and would you look at that? We've got a fusible link with no fuse in it. I wonder if there's supposed to be a wire attached to this somewhere. Probably right there. I'm gonna undo all 10 of these bolts and pull this whole unit out. The whole dadgum fuel pump's gone, unless it's down here. Nope. We've got a piece of copper pipe and a couple hose clamps on a rubber hose. It's like they must have had issues with the electric fuel pump and just deleted it. I bet you the power wire came through this hole connected to the fuel pump, and then this is probably a ground wire. All right, well, I guess we'll throw this back in here. Dead end road there. All right, well, let's throw some gas in her. About 5 gallons of pure goodness. I wonder if our fuel gauge works. Nope, we're still reading empty. Well, we're getting pretty close to cranking on this thing and trying to fire it up for the first time in at least 8 years. We do have a kinked fuel line and a dry rotted broken fuel line. We need to tidy this stuff up first. Once we do that, I'm probably gonna take at least the top of the carburetor apart, clean it up a little bit. We'll change out these radiator lines while we're here, but we're getting pretty close to our first attempt. Now, fuel might be able to pass through this, but I'm gonna go ahead and replace it. Oh. What the heck is going on? Oh, there we go. All right, here's our hard line we need to remake because of this kink we've got in the top. We're gonna have to cut this fitting off though so I can reuse it. Alright, we're gonna put the fitting on, and the more I look at this, I think it might be a double flare. Looks like it's got that lip on the inside. Putting it into my flaring tool. Put the 45-degree inverted bit in. I cannot get this poly armor pipe to stay still in this tool. I tightened this thing so much it bent the rod and actually broke the end off, and it's still slipping. Definitely not as pretty as the factory one. Anyways, we've got to bend this to shape now. Oh, look at that. Oh, you're using the wrong one. No, if I use this one, it'll kink also. See? What in the world? Yep, it just another kink. Tell y'all what I'm gonna do. Take this old one, because this already has a really nice 90. I'm gonna cut it right here. What I don't have in hardline, I'll just make up for in rubber hose. Okay. It's doing it again. And it pushed it out. I think this is just a piece of junk. This is why I always buy expensive stuff. Milwaukee never fails. I just need to find the Milwaukee of hydraulic flaring tools now. Got this thing in here so tight I can't even hardly turn it. And it's still slipping. That did a little bit of a bubble. Maybe I can put a cone in there and flatten it. Professional mechanics, if you have any recommendations for a high quality flaring tool, hydraulic flaring tool, I don't want those little crappy ones you get at the parts store, please let me know, because this thing, I'm fixing to throw it across the yard. Oh man. Okay. It's pushing it. It's pushing it right out. But that die should catch that little flare we made and flatten it out at least a little bit. Hopefully we can work with this. And I learn from my mistakes and buy a copper tube next time and a better flaring tool. All right, hopefully that's the last time we gotta do this. That looks pretty good. That should seal. That took way longer than it should have, but I can actually work with this now. All right, let's do this lower radiator hose now. Oh my gosh, that's gonna need a socket. Thing is froze up. I don't think that's gonna come off. We're pulling on that seam. There we go. Bucket. There we go. All right, now I went and bought radiator hoses for a 307, but I knew it wouldn't fit because this radiator's oriented a little bit differently. A little WD-40 lubrication. So I'm gonna do some test fitting here. We can't do this because we're hitting the exhaust manifold. So how much of this do I need to take off? Here we go. Start by cutting that much off. Well, dadgummit, son. That's factory right there. I got that taken care of, but now I want to fix up these fuel lines that are hidden beneath it. I could hear that crack when I pulled it up. Look at this. Just ripped apart. Ow. That hurt. Let's see if we can, yep, pull that one right off too. This fuel hose needs to be replaced, but we've got some kind of fancy fitting here. Oh, look at that. I wonder if I can cut it behind the nut, get rid of the flare completely. Actually, what I think I can do, I see metal right there. I can just cut whatever's left of this fuel line off and connect a new hose to it. There we go, son. You can see it's barbed right there. So we'll just run a fuel line straight to it with a clamp on it. Boy, look at that. That is exactly what I was hoping for. This might seem obvious to most, but I always try to orient my hose clamps where they're really easy to get to. Looks pretty good. Now the next thing I want to do is hook up this external fuel pump. I'm going to hook it up just past the mechanical fuel pump. Now what I'm going to do is hook this up to 12 volts, pump this thing, and this thing should have enough power to suck through that mechanical fuel pump. And what this is going to do is prime that thing so it doesn't have to crank and crank and crank to suck all the fuel from the tank. All right, here we go. It's going to pump for a minute, and you can usually tell when it's about to start spitting fuel because it'll change pitch. Uh-oh. Can't change pitch a little bit. Yep, there it goes. It's going off in a bucket. Now let's bleed some of that old fuel out. Wait till it gets a little clear. And that's already looking pretty clear. All right, now this thing is primed. We can unhook this, run a new fuel hose from there to here. Now these heater hoses here are so dry rotted that when I stepped on this one, it snapped right off. So we're gonna go ahead and take care of these two heater hoses. What's going on here? Can't get that dang nut off. Do not have time for this. We're not restoring it. We just want to see it run. The sun's starting to go down a lot sooner, and I don't think I like it. Getting dark quick. We're gonna get this one last hose. Boy, y'all will not believe what is in this cooling system. Look at that. And I bet you the whole cooling system looks like that. Again, we've got a part that's not going to be an exact fit, so we've got to try to make the best out of it. Dang, that's gonna be a weird one. Cut her right here. Sweet. Next thing I'm gonna do is pull the top of that carburetor off and just make sure there's not any trash built up in it. Dirt daubers and spiders like to get in those and build their nests. This old Chevy 307 would eat it right up anyways, but I guess you gotta do some things the right way. All right, let's take the top of this carburetor off and just do a little clean. Goodness, there is not hardly a gasket left. Wow, man, thing just fell right apart. One of the main things that I wanted to check here was this float. I just want to make sure this float is not stuck. Looks like there's a little bit of old fuel in there already. Sometimes when these floats fail, they fill up with fuel, and then your carburetor won't get any fuel because the needle valve is shut. Seems to be working to me. I'm gonna need to find me a rebuild kit for one of these if they even make them. Seems to be working. We verified the float moves up and down, and that's enough for me to think that this thing will probably run, at least a little bit. Let's put this guy back on. Okay. Now you may be wondering, what am I gonna do for an air filter? What do you think about this, Grandpa? This will add at least 56 horsepower to our build. Let's throw this puppy on here and we'll have a full-blown race truck. Oh boy. Son, if this ain't an air intake, I don't know what is. We got ourselves a race truck now, boy. I wonder if the hood will close with it like that. You guys didn't know I built race cars? So we better add a little bit of coolant in here since I do plan on racing this thing. Oh my word. This ought to be good for now. I think we're ready to start this thing now. We did verify we have sparks, so as soon as this carburetor gets some fuel, it'll probably spit and sputter a little bit, but it should run. Let's try to fire this thing up. Oh, that was a big old pop out of the carburetor. thing sounds like it's popping directly out of the intake while I'm cranking. Let me make sure that I oriented all of the spark plug wires correctly on the distributor. Certainly sounds like it's having a weird firing issue right now. Let me get out my diagram real quick. Here it is. I've got all these spark plug wires oriented correctly on the distributor. This thing's popping out of the carburetor like it's in the wrong firing order. Tell you what we can do. Let's put piston number 1 at top dead center on the compression stroke. Make sure our crank pulley is lined up with the timing mark. I'll pull that distributor cap off and it should be lined up with cylinder number 1. If it's anywhere else, we need to change it. Okay, there's the timing marks. Okay, I'm gonna try to mark these so that you guys can see them better. So there's the crank pulley mark, and then we want that mark to line up with this 0. Perfect. Now to get an engine to top dead center, the first thing you want to do is pull number 1 spark plug. Once we pull number 1 spark plug, I'm going to remote crank this with a push button. I'm going to put my finger over the hole and you'll feel 2 things. On the intake stroke, you'll feel it suck against your finger, but on the compression stroke, you'll feel it trying to push air out of the cylinder. The only way to get an engine to top dead center is getting that piston at the top of its compression stroke. So when I feel that piston pushing air against my finger, that is when we're going to look at the crank. We're gonna try to line that crank pulley mark up with that timing mark. That's when we'll take the distributor cap off and make sure that that rotor is pointing towards cylinder 1. Normally on these small block Chevys, or any V8 of that matter from the 70s era, it doesn't matter how bad that carburetor's gummed up, how bad the fuel quality is. From the ones I've worked on, as long as you have fuel and spark, you'll hear it hit at least once. All I'm hearing is a bunch of popping out of that carburetor, which is not good. All right, let's pull the spark plug out of number 1. Now I'm gonna put my finger over the spark plug hole like this. All right, I've got this remote starter hooked up, and all we're gonna do. Okay, so that's the intake stroke. Compression stroke. Did you guys hear it? It just blew a bunch of air out of that cylinder, so we're on the compression stroke now. Now what we wanna do is get that to line up with that. And I might be able to turn it over by the fan. Almost there. Looks like it's right on it. Let me get my scope out. I'm gonna try to show you guys exactly what I mean. All right, perfect. So what we're seeing here is the piston all the way at the top of its stroke. Now we need to take that distributor cap off and make sure the rotor is oriented correctly. All right, let's take this cap off of here. I can smell fuel. I know that carburetor's getting fuel. Looks to me like it's in between 3 and 4. So it's not even on a cylinder. So the way that rotor works is it rotates. There are lobes on the shaft beneath this rotor, and as those points hit those lobes while this thing's rotating, they close like this. And when they close, they ground out. And when they ground out, they send energy through this rotor to this pin right here. And as this pin is spinning, you see that? It hits these different terminals. And this thing has to be timed just right so that as it's spinning and those points close, it's sending energy from that pin to these terminals, and when it sends power to those terminals, it goes through the wire and then to the plug, and then that's what gives your spark plug spark. So on top dead center compression stroke, this thing should be facing cylinder number 1, which is this one right here. Leave a mark. I think it's safe to say that this truck did not run when parked. There's no way that it did. At this point, my prediction is one of the 24-volt systems failed on this truck, whether it be the voltage regulator or the distributor coil itself. The distributor coil is usually within the distributor on these military vehicles. So what I think they did was take a regular distributor out of a 12-volt vehicle, throw it in this truck with a 12-volt coil. Then it seems like they tried to make 24 volts 12 volts with those 2 ballast resistors that we found right there. I really thought earlier we found out why this thing was parked, but the distributor's not even put in right. Matter of fact, is it even 180 degrees out? If it was 180 degrees out, it would be facing cylinder number 6. It's in between 3 and 4. I don't know what they were thinking. See, sometimes people will just make the mistake of waiting until piston number 1 reaches the top of its stroke and they won't verify that it's on the compression stroke. But when they put that distributor in, they're 180 degrees out of time. So what surprises me about this mistake is they didn't even mess up the right way. They're not even 180 degrees out. They're like 160 degrees out. Looks like there's a holder here. We'll move the holder out of the way. We'll have to pull this distributor up. We'll have to rotate it where this rotor is lined up with the mark we made on the distributor, because we know that that mark represents cylinder 1. Should pull right out. Okay. Now another thing we're gonna have to do here, see, this distributor is driven by the camshaft, and that shaft also drives the oil pump. Do you see that right there? That goes into the oil pump and spins it, and that's how we keep oil pressure. So what we're gonna have to do, got a long screwdriver, we're gonna have to figure out where this thing's gonna sit, which we want it to sit right there. So I can feel that pin at the bottom of the shaft, and it's aligned this way. So we'll have to take our screwdriver, spin it around like that. See that? So I've got it spun in such a way when I put that distributor in there, I think it should seat up. Another thing I'd like to take note of while we're here, you see these gears, they're not straight up and down, they're kind of angled that way. So when we go to drop this thing in, for example, we want that rotor lined up with cylinder number 1. Well, when we drop this thing in here, it's gonna wanna turn like that. So we're actually gonna have to move it counterclockwise 1 cylinder over to move it to 2. And when we drop this thing in, it's gonna spin. So the distributor fully seated now, and what we can do is line this distributor up, just orient it about right here, tighten our holder back down. Let's put our distributor cap on. One last thing before we go to fire this thing up, I noticed this vacuum line that goes from the carburetor to the distributor. I must have broke it off while we were messing with the distributor. So what I'm gonna do is cut this off. There we go. This vacuum hose is old and brittle. Anyways, I've got this much more flexible vacuum line that I actually took off of a old Toyota Land Cruiser. Put this on instead. All right, let's try this again. Oh, woohoo, baby. You hear the difference? I'm gonna give it a little bit of gas. Oh, definitely needs a little bit of a timing adjustment. We can turn that distributor one way to advance the timing, or the other way to retard the timing. Let me tweak that distributor a little bit. Let's see what happens when I advance it just a hair. All right, let's give her another try. The distributor a little rotation while it was running and smoothed it out. It's idling. Now I just timed it by ear, but the proper way to do this would be to hook up a timing light, watch your marks, and also you need a vacuum gauge hooked up to the distributor. We'll do all that later. I just wanted to hear this thing run, and it sounds pretty good. We don't have an oil light on or a temperature light. We do have a brake light. Brakes don't work at all. Otherwise, from what we can tell, which is not very much using this gauge, this thing's running all right. Right at 180. It means the cooling system's working. Let's shut it off and see if it'll turn back on. Woo! Fired right back up. I am curious to see if our new air intake is gonna clear. I don't think it is. Nope, it's hitting. Well, I'm glad our air intake fits. This thing has certainly come a long way since the beginning of this video. Oil change, the whole ignition system's been redone and converted to 12 volt. New batteries, new hoses, put the distributor back where it's supposed to go. I wanna do one last thing before we attempt to drive this thing. Now, I'm not gonna be driving this on the road. The brakes are shot. That's gonna be a whole nother video. The last thing I wanna do is dial in this ignition timing. Now, I don't think we're gonna get it perfect with all of the potential vacuum leaks that we have. Not for sure that the intake manifold gasket is good, and I am positive that the carburetor gaskets are shot. Just those two things alone can mess with the vacuum advance, but we're gonna get it as close as we can. Fire this thing up and see if we can drive it around the yard. I've got my vacuum gauge and my timing light. These alligator clips are gonna go on a 12 volt battery, and this is gonna go on spark plug wire number 1. You can see that arrow there pointing to the right, so that's gonna go with the flow of energy. So we're just gonna clip this on to 1, remove our vacuum line, hook up our vacuum gauge. All right, let's fire this thing up, shoot the light at our timing marks, and see what this thing's currently running. I'm not sure that this camera is gonna pick it up because the shutter speed is not gonna match the rotation and the timing of the light. We are currently running about 14 degrees advanced, which is way too high for idle. The gauge ain't reading nothing. I bet you they had this vacuum advance plugged in the wrong port. There should be another one on this carburetor. Yep, there it is. I'm gonna move this cap to this port, and I'm gonna move our gauge to this one. There it is. Now I'm gonna rotate that distributor clockwise and retard the timing a little bit. We wanna get down to about 6 degrees initial timing. I'm gonna set this to 6, how about there? And it looks like we're just barely in the green for vacuum. So let's turn it up just a little bit. I want that needle to be in the green. Vacuum gauge is right in the green. I'm gonna reconnect our vacuum advance, and then we're gonna read this timing light again. Yeah, that's a little higher than I'd like it to be. I'm gonna turn it down a little bit. Oh boy, we're right on it. All right, I'm gonna tighten the distributor down and we'll be good to go. Let's see what old girl's got. Transfer case into 2 high. Put her in first. Oh my gosh. This thing needs a clutch adjustment. This thing is so cool. just for you.
Thanks,
Hop on in, princess.
It smells so good in here. It smells like a race car.
I just got done telling the audience I build race cars. Clutch definitely needs adjusting. You gotta pull it all the way out. Let's go to second, no brakes. Oh my goodness, this thing's a rocket ship. Okay, third, here we go. Oh, this thing is smooth as a Cadillac.
Yeah.
Built hot rod. There you have it, everybody. We got it running again. Runs pretty good. Not the best donuts. Yeah, that's not a very good donut.
So good.
It's a small block Chevy.
Small block Chevy.
307 race
block,
truck.
big
Race truck. Pulling truck.
But even,
those seats are pretty comfy.
they don't look comfy. They look terrible, actually.
Yeah, they look like plastic, but they're actually really nice.
Yeah.
Squishy foam.
AC.
Yep. I just ain't got the AC hooked up yet. I need to get me an AC guy hook this up. Well, everybody, there you have it. The Chevy XM705. Pretty cool old truck. It doesn't have any brakes. We'll do that another time. We're still doing a bunch of work to the Duramax. I'm gonna be reamping the M37 series again here pretty soon. I have a lot of plans to do a lot of work to my $2,500 work truck. I got a lot more exciting secrets planned out for the future, so you guys stay tuned. That's gonna be it for this video. Peace out. UPS man is here. And he has a 1 of 36 delivery. Did you get a spare wheel? Spare wheel and tire was with it? I mean, I can't read this. Was there a spare wheel and tire?
No, God.
Yeah, I don't know what that means. There was supposed to be a spare wheel and tire that was to be thrown in the back of the truck. Yeah. No spare wheel and tire?
It's
Yeah, I was leaning up against it, right? So you didn't want to put it in the back of the truck? He's literally saying, holy crap. Yes. It was lying next to the truck. You didn't put it in the back?
No.
Why? Well, that's what I paid you for.
Грузил ее один.
Shipped at 1. I don't know what that means.
It's no.
Yeah, you're supposed to put the wheel and the tire in the back of the truck. That's what I told your boss. Here, you want me to? I asked your boss that you would put that wheel and tire in the back of the truck for me, and he said you would.
I don't know.
He didn't tell you?
I don't know.
Oh, okay, all right. It doesn't matter now. It's in Maryland.
Ничего об этом не говорили.
I wasn't told anything about it. All right. No big deal. It's just one of 36 military truck. I'm sure I'll be able to find these wheels anywhere, right? I think this guy's Ukrainian. Ukraine? Russian. This is why truck drivers need to speak English. Yeah, prime it. What do you think? Crane. Yeah, it works. You have to undo all this to make it work though. It's rigged up. That's how you run it. Big winch.
Yep.
That's how you run it right here.
Good.
Check this out. Yeah. Wasn't paying attention, backed right into it.